Jimmy and JoAnne, welcome. Happy September and welcome back. We're here on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope and DLive and all of our platforms. I want to let everybody know that we're doing a show every Monday night at 8:30 Eastern called Unseen Libya with Jimmy and JoAnne Moriarty. How are you guys tonight?
Great.
We're
Thank
good.
you so much
Thank
for having us, Jason.
It's always wonderful to see the two of you, and you know, we've just finished a pre-recorded interview. You guys have brought in some phenomenal guests, people who grew up in Libya, people who are living in Libya, people who have got firsthand on-the-ground information. So we've just completed our pre-recorded interview with Mufta, I'm so sorry, it's Mufta Faraj, there we go. And we're going to be playing that in just about 30 minutes at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. It was a really interesting conversation where we learned a lot about this revolution. Tell us a bit about this 50th anniversary of the revolution and some of the other things we spoke about, including the incredible smear campaign that's gone on against Libya that included the destruction, or rather the blaming of the destruction of Pan Am Flight 103 on Gaddafi.
Well, September 1st, 2019 is the 50-year anniversary of the great al-Fateh revolution. It was a bloodless coup that gave Libya back to the Libyan people from all the imperialists that were occupying Libya and had occupied Libya for thousands of years. The old despot king who was put in Libya by the UK and Italy was a despot. Libya never had a king. That was just something that was put in there by England so they would have a puppet leader, and he did nothing for the country. He was a despot. He was a pedophile, I think, wasn't he? He was a bad guy. Anyway, when Libya was suffering so bad poverty and no development, the Libyan people were the slaves of the Italians, basically. They were not allowed to own land. They just worked these big plantations, olive plantations and stuff. So 11 of the biggest tribes got together and planned a coup to throw over the king and take over their country. And the old king heard about it, and he just ran off.
Yeah.
So that was the bloodless coup. He just ran off.
The average salary in Libya was 60 dinar a year. 60 dinar a year. And at that time, the oil companies, foreign oil companies, were pulling out 3.5 or 3.8 million barrels of oil a day and about the equivalent dollar volume in natural gas out of Libya. And the population in Libya was 5 million or so in that time. And for them to be living, for the people to be enjoying no more than 60 dinar a year was an absolute travesty. And finally, they'd had enough. And they actually had a bloodless coup, and these 11 tribes went in there, and when the king and all of his entourage heard about it, they left the country because they knew they were wrong.
Well, then the military that had led the coup, out of these 11 tribes, appointed Gaddafi as leader because Gaddafi, he was young, but he was very clever. He was very charismatic. He was highly educated. He
spoke several languages.
Yeah, and Libya had never had their own leadership in their country. They'd been run by the Italians, by the British, by the Turks, by the Ottoman Empire, by the Romans. They'd been occupied for thousands of years, and so they appointed him to be the leader of their country. And the first thing he did was give the land to the people that were slaves of that land.
They've been working all their lives.
He threw out the Italians. He he immediately kicked the Americans out. They were occupied with a military force at Wheelus Air Force Base. He threw them out, and he threw the British out and the French out of the country. He said, no more. We don't want any imperialism in this country. We're going to run this country ourselves. And the great tribes of Libya came together. They developed a government. They started to develop their country. They developed roads and hospitals. And in 40 years.
Even before that.
Yeah.
Right after they had this bloodless coup.
That's Gaddafi and his wife.
And you see his wife's not covered with a beekeeper's outfit.
No, because he was against that. He said that was not part of his
Gaddafi went to the West. He went to the United States and England. He said, would you please come and help us learn how to run our own country, how to develop the country, how to build the infrastructure and everything. And the the U.S. told him, the first thing you do is you reinstall King Idris as the leader of your country. Then we'll talk to you.
But the CIA,
and he said, we're not about to do that.
Yeah.
So he then went to Russia, and Russia said, sure, we'll help you. That's how the influence of Russia became very strong in Libya. He went
and
first
now
to the West.
we know also perhaps why Ronald Reagan was so staunchly anti-Gaddafi. If he was being helped by the Soviet Union, we know that Ronald Reagan was laser beam focused on destroying the Soviet Union.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
but also the CIA was working with Gaddafi to have him build nuclear weapons in Libya.
Years later.
Yeah, that was in the 80s, but
they encouraged it.
Yeah.
They encouraged it because that gave them a reason to attack Libya then.
Right. And
So
you've
you got
shown
all
us
the
your
bad-
photographs, Jimmy, from the private meeting with the nuclear scientist, the Libyan nuclear physicist who had worked on that program.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
he was flown into Florida to pick up yellow cake by the CIA during the time of the embargo on Libya. I mean, the whole thing was just.
But this can be
a
real.
joke.
This can be real interesting show. There's a list of 40 stamps, and each one of those stamps shows 40 years a development. 40 different stamps shows a development of Libya during the first 40 years of the al-Fateh revolution. And then, of course, Gaddafi remained in power for another years after that until Libya was blown up. But each one of those is an accomplishment that took place in Libya during that period of time. All your audience will really enjoy seeing that. They'll get a good idea about really what kind of development took place in Libya.
Yeah, but you also hear move to say Gaddafi was against any attacks or hurting of any civilian people.
Yeah, wouldn't
go along with it. So he never did the Lockerbie attack. He was anti-radical Islamic.
Would not support it at all.
Hated it. They were not allowed in the country. They were either in prison or in exile. Those are the people Hillary Clinton joined hands with to come break Libya in 2011, along with 250,000 mercenaries, because there's only 4% about that were radical Islamists in Libya.
You know, as we're talking, it occurs to me, because every time this Lockerbie destruction comes up, I remember a documentary that I saw a few years ago that spoke about these Army intelligence investigators or some sort of investigators who were on board Pan Am 103 that the perpetrators of Iran-Contra wanted to stop the plane from reaching the United States and had high-value targets on the plane that they wanted to kill. Jimmy, I know you know some more about this. I think we should dig into this some more, because everything that's going on right now with Jeffrey Epstein and William Barr back as the Attorney General. William Barr was sort of like the goaltender for Iran-Contra, and Bill Clinton was the interface to the United States where all the drugs came in. So we're seeing some of the players take position right now, and it's funny how all these things interrelate.
That's right. Well, you have to look at Clinton, his involvement in Iran-Contra, the big activities went on in the Nina airport, Barr's absolute involvement. He was the right-hand man to Casey, and Bill Clinton was their fair-haired child. So it's just corruption from top to bottom, and it continues to this day.
There he is again.
Yeah.
With one of the other despots.
Yeah. But, Clinton was so far inside the Iran-Contra deal, it's not even funny.
Right. So it seems like a terrible choice. I mean, that was my first instinct for Donald Trump to have selected William Barr, of all the people he could have, to be Attorney General. I frankly thought that Matthew Whitaker might have been a better choice. He had no direct involvement with Iran-Contra. I think he might even be younger than me, so he was a kid when that happened. It's increasingly troubling that William Barr of Iran-Contra pedigree is the guy who we're relying on to hopefully drain the swamp and prosecute Bill and Hillary Clinton. So it's just very...
The same bad guys just keep rotating.
Trump appointed,
they change position, they rotate, they change
Trump
position.
appointed Bolton as a security advisor.
Please give me a
break.
break.
Look at Bolton. I mean, how can you justify that? You can't.
Yeah.
So obviously, he's not in charge of Washington, D.C. or anything that goes on inside or outside of there.
I hope that's not the case. Perhaps we'll be surprised.
I would like to be surprised.
I would like to be surprised. I want to remind everybody that in just about 20 minutes, we're beginning our full show, which is going to include the interview with Mufta, and people can watch that by going over to patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We're at the beginning of a new month here, and there's always a bit of a drop-off in the subscribers on Patreon. I was reading a Patreon document about this, and it was talking about how, certain credit card charges don't go through, so they sort of clear out the roles. If there's anyone who is subscribed to Jimmy and JoAnne or to Crowdsource the Truth on Patreon, now's a great time to make sure that it's your current credit card that's in there, that your subscription is still good. A lot of this material that Jimmy, JoAnne, and myself bring to you each week on Unseen Libya is exactly the type of stuff that would get taken right off of YouTube. Jimmy and JoAnne have had many occasions where their YouTube channels have been totally deleted, their videos have been deleted, and you just can't see this information. We certainly can't rely on YouTube to monetize these videos and keep this information coming. So if you value the information that Jimmy and JoAnne are bringing us, in many cases directly from tribal leaders, people on the ground in Libya, it's critically important that you become a sponsor on Patreon or Subscribestar. And it's also important that you visit LibyanWarTheTruth.com. This is Jimmy and JoAnne's website. It's totally free to explore, and they're updating it almost daily, sometimes more frequently, with lots of information coming directly from their contacts in Libya. You can also support Jimmy and JoAnne by purchasing their DVD, Escape from Al-Qaeda, which contains tons of documents, videos, photographs, and details of their almost unbelievable story of their near-death experience as they literally escaped from Al-Qaeda, the only people known, certainly to the U.S. intelligence services, to have done such a thing. The DVD is $15, and it's only $5 to ship it within the United States. But of course, if you become a sponsor of Jimmy and JoAnne on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, just drop them an email and let them know that you want the DVD, and the shipping is going to be free. We're just about ready to transition over to our show on Patreon, Jimmy and JoAnne. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we do that?
Yeah, our special guest today, Mufta Faraj, is the director of the International Human Rights Commission in Libya. And his English is pretty good, really a hard-working guy, and he's been our interface with the tribes forever.
He's been targeted forever.
Yeah, he's been targeted.
He's lost a bunch of phones and stuff being targeted by the bad guys. So,
but he's out of the country right now, so we had a real good connection with him, and he's a great guy, a lot of information. He's real adamant about telling everybody that, the people in Libya love the past regime. They had a peaceful life, very successful. So it's a real good firsthand account of what Libya was like.
Yeah. And we should also remind everybody, I didn't create these graphics, and as far as I know, JoAnne, you didn't create these. These are the graphics provided by people in Libya. So even almost a decade after his death, 50 years after the revolution, Gaddafi is still celebrated all over Libya. What's this plane that's being crushed here?
That's the plane that bombed his house.
Yeah.
Oh.
They made a statue.
Wow.
That's the plane of Reagan,
Wow. Yeah, I think a lot of people in the United States at this point in 2019 realize that many people in the Ronald Reagan administration were lying to us. And once you embrace that reality, the notion that Gaddafi was, he should have put on a red cap that says, "Make Libya great again," because that's what he was all about. And this raging battle of nationalism in Libya is analogous to what we're seeing in the United States today. So I think people are going to find this conversation with Mufta Faraj extremely interesting, and I hope that people will tune in just about 15 minutes to patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Jimmy and JoAnne, thanks so much. I'll see you in just a bit.
One more comment.
Yes,
they're going to
absolutely.
they're going to see Gaddafi spitting in the eye of all the world leaders that were not treating their countries properly. He
Well,
was
not
really an
literally.
outspoken guy. He would tell the truth, you know.
But we don't have that video. It's not literally going to be Gaddafi spitting in their eye. It'll be an explanation of how he figuratively
Yeah,
did that.
exactly.
And
That's
I
right.
mean, when you think about that and you think about the things that Gaddafi did for the people of Libya and how much they adored him, and then you see that video of him being killed by these mercenaries and Hillary Clinton laughing about it, it's hard to find words to describe.
Killing the wrong people. We're killing the wrong people. That's what the problem
That's
is.
the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you, Jason. God
Thank you,
bless
Jason.
everybody.
And thank you too, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you on Patreon and Subscribestar.